We've been working on this project now since I think probably about February, and we plan to keep going for the rest of the year. But what you have here is a very important corridor that connects important national parks to the north and then important national parks to the south of the area. It's called the Thin Green Line because it's been heavily cleared for agriculture and urbanisation and so on. But there are still really important pockets of remnant vegetation, and we're looking at private properties and surveying essentially what are the predator and prey species in this corridor. So, as I said, it's a community-based wildlife monitoring project. Our focus is on spotted-tailed quolls as the predator and then gliding possums as the prey species. And it is a proud collaboration with the Southern Highlands Landcare Network and Team Quoll at the University of Wollongong. So what you can see here is quoll survey sites that my group has looked at for more than 10 years ago now, and there's some evidence of quolls locally. But what we're really doing is, with wildlife in particular, and particularly when we're thinking about conservation, the sort of holy grail for a conservation biologist is a density estimate. So if we can get these density estimates, we can understand where and how these animals are living and how they're moving across the landscape. Without a density estimate, it's pretty hard to definitively say you've got an animal here, it's in residence and it's in residence for however much of the year. Looking at where they are over time is of vital importance, and then identifying those corridors that they move through. The other thing that we're trying to achieve, which is really important, is capacity building in citizen science. Usually science teams of scientists, research groups, so they're quite small, and certainly we rely a lot on our community members to help us fill in the gaps. So that means that Aidan and I, we come and do events like this, speak to the community, and then also go out to properties and teach people how to use these bits of equipment so that you can collect the data and then feed into these projects. Really what we are about is encouraging habitat restoration, connectivity, protection of hollow-bearing trees, also contributing current data to national recovery plans, both for the spotted-tailed quoll and then also for the greater gliders, which should be out soonish. There is the national recovery plan for the spotted-tailed quoll. As I said, for the greater gliders, it's still in train. But certainly for the spotted-tailed quoll, one of those key objectives of that is to work on private property. And so the data that we collect will feed back into that national recovery plan. We have got ground cameras, and this is a sort of typical setup for a ground camera. You've got the camera here, and then in the foreground you've got the bait cage, and then inside that bait cage is some chicken. They don't eat the chicken, they can't get to the chicken, but they can smell it when that chicken starts rotting. Then it brings in these predators, and then we can get a picture of them. So that's our ground cameras to collect data on predators. And this is an example of quolls, and you can see there's the bait cage and the animals interacting with the bait cage. So that's the data that we collect and that we can then analyse. And then with that, if you notice, we've got date and then we've got times and so on. So all of that metadata is of use to us. The second method that we use is to survey the prey species, and these are arboreal camera traps that we call the selfie trap. And what that selfie trap is, we put that up in a tree, and at one end of that trap, just in a PVC tube, we've got the camera, we've got a little bit of rolled oats, peanut butter and honey. Again, in a little cage, the animals can't get to it, but they can interact with it and they can smell it. And then they'll come to about here, and then they'll have their picture taken, and you can see bush rat and then an antechinus interacting with the bait cage. And from there we can also work out the individuals there. Here's a sugar glider, and sugar gliders have got unique head stripes. And if they've got a unique pattern, we can count those animals without actually touching them again. So getting to that density estimate that we're all so interested in as conservation biologists. And then part of what Aidan is doing is he has set up this iNaturalist project as well. So all the data that we collect and the cameras that we put out, this can all be fed back into this iNaturalist project. So I've got the QR code there, and if anyone's interested, you can scan that and it can take you straight to that particular page and you can add your sightings to it. But certainly Aidan will be doing some more social media posts and we'll be getting out the information about this over the next few months. So I just wanted to show you or talk a little bit about the 2 species or 3 species really that we are most interested in. And certainly in the Wingecarribee Shire in the last 46 years, there's been quite a few records of spotted tail quolls. But these are all by the way sightings, if you like. Someone might see one on a road one night or someone might hear something and so they will go and they will record this particular sighting. But they're absolutely here. Now is when, if you're going to see one, you will. Their mating season spreads from about May through to June, and so this is when they are most active, particularly the males. In terms of the southern greater glider, here are the records. I've just put up the records for the last 20 years. The reason that we've got such amazing records in the Wingecarribee is because of the drone surveys that were done for koalas. And so those drone surveys also pick up greater gliders. And so you can see that depending on the technology that's being used is whether or not we've got a lot of data or not a lot of data. But this is only in the last few years that we've got this rich data set that we know that the Wingecarribee has so many greater gliders. Again, sugar gliders, lots of sightings, again, coming off of those drone surveys for koalas. And that's great to have that information. And certainly what I'll show you next will give you a little bit more idea about what we've got on our cameras from these surveys. Here's the Wild Neighbours Project. Here are the sites. We've got 7 sites, and at each site we have up to 3 ground cameras. 3 to 5 ground cameras, and the same of arboreal cameras. And I'll just show you, I should point out in case you can't make it out exactly, Macquarie Pass National Park right there, and then Robertson itself here. So we've got them stretching these different locations. Some of them are abutting National Park. So we'll just go through each site and just have a look at what we have found on them. So here at site 1, happy to report that quite a lot of antechinus, some brush-tailed possum, a feather-tailed glider. We'll get this to play, and this is really quick. Can you see the glider? Right there, it'll be there for an instant, so I'll just press play and you'll see it won't stay around too long. See, off it goes. So I know Aidan was particularly proud of that video, so well done, Aidan. I'll play it once more because it's a bit cute. There it goes. Yeah, you got to get your eye in. And then sugar glider, and so they tend to hang around a little bit more on the cameras. But on the ground cameras, so in terms of predators, our most common species that we got were wombats, and then followed by swamp wallabies. We did get some cats there as well, and some foxes, which we expected. But we still do have many more native species, I should say, than introduced species at this site. Oh, there it goes again. So moving on to the second site. Here, the majority of species that we saw on the ground cameras were wombats, and you can see a mum and baby in this particular footage. But we did see a lot of foxes on these ground cameras. But yeah, interesting combination of the two. Oh, mum again. So site 3 is a combination of antechinus and radius species. So with the radius species, they could be introduced or they could be native bush rats. It's often quite difficult to tell apart the difference. Here you can see a little antechinus going about its business in this particular footage. But again, on the ground cameras, quite a mix of rats, wombats, and then swamp wallabies as well. Site 4, I think that's heading up Tourist Road. We've got some antechinus, ringtail possums, and I think this one's a ringtail possum coming into view, yep. And then some rat species as well. And on the ground cameras again, wombats mostly, but then foxes and also rats too. In Robertson itself, at the site there, on the arboreal cameras, lots of rats, probably introduced. And then some antechinus species too. On the ground cameras, again, combination of red fox, swamp wallaby and so on. So we'll see a few more introduced species in Robertson itself. And then at site 6, again, antechinus and rat species in the arboreal cameras. And then on the ground, we've got mostly wombats, but then also a mix of the other species too that we're seeing at the other sites. At site 7, it's our final site. Again, lots of introduced species, lots of rats, but then some ringtail possums. And then on the ground cameras, again, rats. That seemed to be a common theme for this one. Okay, so how can you help? So really, the message that we give landholders and the community is to protect what's already there. It's very hard to restore something. It's a lot easier to protect what's already there. So that means if you've got hollow-bearing trees, try and keep them, fallen logs, leaf litter, dense shrubs. If you can, fence off remnant vegetation, creek lines, fence that off from stock and then also vehicles. Avoid tidying up, messy is good. Native species love messy, humans don't, but species do. That's a lot of habitat complexity is this messiness, and absolutely our wildlife need that. If you can, think about installing structural habitat on your property, so that means nest boxes, but they do have to be the appropriate nest boxes. It can't just be any old nest box. We have to be very careful that the nest boxes that we put up are the nest box for that species. Particularly, a lot of them are they're sensitive to any kind of temperature variations. You could overheat these species, so it's best to investigate what box for what species and then put that up. Simple things like creating brush piles or rock piles for reptiles and small mammals, and if it's safe to do, leaving dead timber or stags where they stand. It's a very valuable habitat. So that's it from me. Though before I go, as part of this project, we have a survey that we'll be sending out to the landholders who were involved in this project. We have got your contact details, so we'll contact you directly. Okay, good. And I'd just like to say that Wild Neighbours was funded through the local land services, and we do thank them for their support. And Aidan and I are happy to take any questions that you have.
Is there a quick and easy way to identify an antechinus as distinct from a black rat?
Yeah, so they've got far pointier features. And if you have a look at them side on, they absolutely look like their cousins, and their cousins are spotted-tailed quolls. So they just look like tiny quolls. So in this particular image, you can see the side profile of the antechinus and then the side profile of the bush rat. They've got much more rounded features compared to the antechinus. And antechinus have actually got quite obvious teeth, if you can see that they're predator. They're related to the Tasmanian tiger and then also the quoll. So they absolutely do look like their cousins in that respect. Maybe I've just looked at too many of them and so now it's obvious to me. But yeah, the way that I look at them or can tell the difference is just that they've got far pointier snouts compared to, say, the rats.
Do they like a rat, or do they have teeth like
They've
a
got
Tasmanian
very,
devil?
very skinny, tiny teeth, and I have videos here.
Oh, there we go. Skinny, tiny teeth. I've had one hanging from my finger. I can tell you they hurt, and they do have teeth.
So if I'm on my bush block,
Yeah, it's a hard one. For a quoll to be in residence, you really need to have quite a lot of contiguous forest. They very much love creek lines. They love any kind of rocky overhang, caves, that kind of habitat is what they prefer. But if you're near or you've been in, say, Budaroo National Park or Barren Grounds Nature Reserve, that's ideal quoll habitat, that kind of wet sclerophyll, but with the rocky overhang. They love that. If you're looking for quolls on your property, if it sounds like this is what your property consists of, look for flat rocks. They often use that as latrine sites. So if you go there and you can see some scat, there's usually scat with bones and things in it and twisty ends, you can see fur. That tells you it's a predator scat, but if you see many scats in the same spot, that tells you probably got a quoll latrine. So they like to go there and they signal to each other all sorts of things with those scats. Yeah. It's hard to find a latrine, but once you find one, you definitely know you're at one.